Okay, I think that we're ready to go. So any questions before we continue? Like what are we talking about? What are you on about? What are you doing? Any questions? What's up with the face?
I just want to ask you about the eye. You're talking about the eye.
Yeah.
So I have, I've done and I'm doing meditation and have already like a philosophy about the eye. So when you're talking about the eye, are you referring about the ignorance of the eye, or what was the point about the eye? Was to realize the ignorance about the eye? Or?
Yeah. So actually, all right. So I'm just going to repeat also your question for the people at home. So the question was, what's the point in meditating on the eye? While we're meditating on the eye, you said that you're doing different types of meditations. I didn't hear clearly all the question, but I think that in gist, what's the point in meditating on the eye? We're looking into the way that ignorance, for example, conceives of the eye. Yeah, so in order to answer that, I wanted to look at the meditation outline, but also maybe to expand a little bit about emptiness and selflessness, to put it also in a bigger context. So first off, I need to share this with the people at home, just a second. All right, so let's try to make it bigger. So we have a basic meditation structure for emptiness, meditating on emptiness, which consists of 4 points. That's a very common one. It's not that all meditations on emptiness will necessarily follow this structure, but I think that it's still useful. At least for me, I find that if I follow a meditation procedure that is structured, that I have points, that kind of I don't get lost in between. Yeah, sorry, our projector just went spastic for a second. Yeah, this is still working here.
Yeah, so that's still, you're still on Zoom, I think. Just... I think it turned itself off before.
Yeah. I think it just needs a little bit of time.
Sorry?
I think it just needs a little bit of time to start.
You continue, that's right.
All right. So the first point is to identify what is an inherently existing I, which is what we want to refute. So our innate ignorance within our own mind completely believes in an inherently existing I. When I say completely believes, in more technical language, we say that it is grasping at an inherently existing I. It makes this kind of ignorance thinks that there's a certain way that I appear to a mind, and ignorance believes that it exists in a way that it appears to us. It is grasping at it to be factual. This is reality. I exist independently, completely by its own power, independent from everything else. This is the way that ignorance conceives of the I. Not only it conceives of the I, because of that ignorance, all of our afflictive states of mind develop and increase. Like, for example, just to illustrate that, I think that now when we think of, for example, Actually, before I get to that, sorry. Not only it conceives of the I to exist in that way, it conceives of everything to exist in that way. So for example, when I look at you, when you look at me, we appear to each other as if we also exist independently by our own power, in and of ourselves, objectively. And our ignorance also conceives of that, of ourselves to know each other, to exist in that way. Or when we think of things that we like or things that we dislike, I like cakes. I don't like mangoes. I like ice creams. I don't like papayas. All those things that I like and dislike also appear to our mind as if they exist completely by their own power, having those inherent qualities within them that are independent from anything else. Like, for example, I don't like mangoes. So to my mind, it appears that there are qualities in mangoes that are there in the object, existing objectively, without my mind relating to those qualities or labeling those qualities in a certain way. And in the objects, those qualities make the object be completely disagreeable with me, completely disgusting or slimy. And it doesn't have to do at all with the way that I conceive of mangoes. So everything appeared to my mind as if it exists completely from its own side, in and of itself, independently, without my mind making it be the way that it is. So we have ignorance with respect to ourselves, which believes that things appear in the way that they exist, but also ignorance with respect to everything else, that also everything else appears to us as if it exists in the way that it appears, and ignorance completely believes in that. So because of that basic ignorance of believing that things exist in the way that they appear to us, afflictive states of mind develop. So for example, when someone annoys us or harms us, we get angry with another person, they appear to us as if they exist completely independently by their own power as an evil person that is out there to harm us. The whole point in their existing is to make me unhappy or to make me annoyed with them. So we don't see how a mind actually interacts with that object. It seems that all bad qualities in that object are there objectively, in the object itself, independently. And because of that, because of that same objective existing, then the mind starts to ascribe some qualities to that object. Like, for example, this object is 100% evil. The person is completely evil. They're completely annoying. They're completely bent on harming me. They're completely stupid. They're completely arrogant. They're completely abusive and so forth, without seeing any connection between how my mind perceives them and how do they actually exist. So because of believing in those appearances as if things exist objectively, a mind either exaggerates positive qualities or negative qualities in certain objects, and then anger arises, or attachment arises, or a sense of superiority arises, or jealousy and so forth. All of that is based on ignorance. So we can say that basically we have two types of ignorance. Ignorance with respect to ourselves, and ignorance with respect to all other things. Or you can say that ignorance with respect to persons in general, like everyone in general, all people. Not only all people, we can also include other living beings in that. So, ignorance with respect to birds, the way that birds exist, koalas, snakes, drop bears, whatever that might be. No, you can say that there's ignorance with respect to them, and also ignorance with respect to everything else. The way that ignorance apprehends everything is exactly in the same way, in that it believes that things exist in the way that they appear. But we can still make the distinction between ignorance with respect to ourselves and ignorance with respect to everything else. Ignorance with respect to living beings in general, and ignorance with respect to everything else. It's the same belief of existing inherently, existing independently, but still there's distinction between ourselves and other things. why that distinction is made. It is this distinction is made because we have different philosophies in Buddhism itself. So Buddhism is not like one unified system of beliefs or philosophy. There are different schools of thought within Buddhism itself. So some philosophies within Buddhism say that the reason that we are so stuck in samsara is because of our ignorance with respect to ourselves. Not with respect to birds or microphones or televisions or whatever, not with respect to other things that exist in a certain way. It is because of the way that we appear to ourselves. While other philosophies say that ignorance is just general ignorance. It is ignorance with respect to everything. The way that everything, ignorance that believes that everything exists in the way that it appears. So because of those different philosophies, we make distinction sometimes between persons and other people, and other things, other phenomena. But in general, kind of when we look at ignorance, at least from this point of view of the philosophy that we follow, ignorance is the same ignorance in that it conceives of things to exist in the way that they appear, as if they exist independently, in and of themselves, objectively. And because of the ignorance, we go again and again in cyclic existence. So in order to undo that ignorance, you can, for example, you can meditate on how this gompa doesn't exist in the way that it appears. Or you can meditate on how this flower doesn't exist in the way that it appears. And it is useful to a certain degree in that when you look at outside things that are very close, you can see how they appear to you in a certain way. Like, for example, this flower appears to me as if it exists by its own power as flower, without my mind calling it flower or seeing it as flower. It appears to exist independently as flower. And I can meditate on this flower, analyze it, and come to see that it doesn't exist in the way that it appears. And it might make a certain change in the way that I see the flower, but it doesn't really shake an underlying foundational ignorance that still exists in my mind, which is mainly with respect to the way that I exist, the way that my body exists. So you could say that the more significant or powerful form of ignorance is with respect to the way that we perceive ourselves, or with respect to the way that we perceive our body. We also perceive other things with ignorance, like cars and cows and snakes and so forth. And we do develop certain emotions with respect to them, or afflictive states of mind. And we can meditate on how they do not exist independently. And it will create some shift in our mind. But the biggest shift that we want to create is with respect to the way that we apprehend ourselves, that we apprehend our body. And through that, we will also come to understand better in a more efficient way, the way that each and every, all other things, each and every other thing exists. So that is why we meditate on how I exist. This is the thing that is closest to home, you might say, our apprehension of I, yourself, which also something that, is together with us at every single moment of the day. Even if we don't have really strong conceptual process at the moment in which we think that I now thinking of myself, and this is the way that I appear to myself, still it seems that almost in every minute of the day, there is that underlying sense of I, a selfhood, that our mind apprehends. Sometimes it is very strong, sometimes not very strong. And it is always coming with the assumption that I exist in the way that I appear to myself. Which is also another thing that I wanted to bring up in this afternoon session. Actually, it's still a morning session, sorry. We're still in the morning. I guess that in other parts of the world, in New Zealand, it's probably getting closer to the afternoon. So, as I said, there are different philosophies in Buddhism, and they try to understand what is I or me and the way that I exist. So it's important also just to say a few words about it in order to include that in a meditation of recognizing ignorance. So one reason for identifying what I does exist and what of I does not exist, right? Because we do exist. It's not that we say that I does not exist. No, I do not exist at all. Of course I exist. No, experience pain or experience pleasure. I'm comfortable now, and there are times in which I'm not comfortable. So we know based upon a personal experience that I exist. We do not deny that. What we do deny is that an independent I exists. Objectively existing I exist, right? So there's an existent I and there is a non-existent I. We want to make a distinction between them. So, as I said, when we look at our day-to-day experiences, we constantly come in contact, we interact with different things around us, and we react to that with anger, attachment, with aversion, with certain sense of attraction. We have different views of different things. So a sense of I, sense of independently existing I, how strong we adhere to that also affects our anger, our attachment, and so forth. So that's one reason for looking at identifying the sense of I that we have. But another thing is that from a Buddhist perspective, we say that we go from this lifetime to the next lifetime. We came to this lifetime from previous lifetime. Also, actions that I've created in my past lifetimes affect the experiences that I have in this lifetime. And actions that I take in this lifetime will be experienced by me in future lifetimes. So what is that I that goes from one lifetime to the next, which is also the one that carries all the karmas that we've accumulated in previous lifetime and accumulates the karma that we perform in this lifetime and will experience the result of that karma in future lifetimes. So what is that sense of I? So then when different Buddhist schools of thought try to identify what it is, most of them say that it's ridiculous to think that the I is the body. Because I came to this lifetime from previous lifetime, and from this lifetime, I will go to next lifetime, and the body is just a transient thing. So all philosophies say that I am not my body. It sounds quite simple, right? It sounds quite logical, but still we identify with the body to such a great degree. When we think of our apprehension of a self, for example, when we think of I or me, often, for example, this sense of I or me comes with a certain gender affiliation, which is based on body, right? Mostly it is based on our organs. So when we think of, when I think of myself, I think of myself as I'm a man, I'm a male. Now, when many of you think of yourself, you think of yourself in terms of being a woman. Or, I might think to myself, I'm tall, or I'm short, I'm fat, or I'm thin, I'm attractive, or, I don't like my body, it doesn't seem to be attractive. So we do identify to a certain degree with the body, and a sense of identity is by and large based on the characteristics of the body. But it's clear that when you think about it from the viewpoint of past and future lifetimes, then we come to this life from previous life, we have a new body, we will go to future life, we'll have a different type of body. So I'm not my body. Am I my mind? Like, for example, sometimes I think, I'm quite an angry person, or I'm a very passionate person. I'm quite smart, or I'm not that smart. I'm very compassionate, or I'm very angry. I can be very cruel. So I identify with some qualities of my mind to certain, in certain periods of my life. So is it that the real I is my mind? So some philosophies say that, yeah, I am my mind. Of course, I'm not my eye consciousness. I'm not my ear consciousness. I'm my mental consciousness. Many philosophies say that. Many Buddhist philosophies say that. But really, when we start to question that, am I my mind, we start to see faults in also thinking that I am my mind. And we will cover that in our meditations today and tomorrow. Then, when you look at in Buddhism, we say there are lower philosophies or lower schools and higher schools of thought, not in terms of looking down on some philosophies and thinking that we are superior to them, just in terms of thinking that they have certain ideas, certain explanation. It's great explanation. It's a great as a stepping stone for getting something that is more subtle. You can see some faults in course presentation of lower schools of thought. So they're good stepping stones, but they're still course. They have some faults. So we can see the faults, negate those faults, or say that there's a problem with those faults. So let's look at something that is deeper. So that's a stepping stone for something that is more subtle, a higher philosophy. So we get then, in a certain process, we refine our understanding of what is I or what is me, the one that goes from this lifetime to the next, the one that interacts with everything in this life. And we mainly check whether is there a me or I, am I my mind? We see a fault in saying that I am my mind. And we get to a certain school of thought that is called the Madhyamika school of thought. The Madhyamika school of thought, middle way school of thought, has two types, two sub-schools. One of them says that the actual I is a combination of, there needs to be kind of a certain combination of body and mind. And on top of that, there is a consciousness that labels that as I or me. So there's something that exists from the side of the object, something that exists there objectively. And then there is a mind that gives it a name. So just to illustrate that, for example, the US is going to vote a new president soon.
Hopefully.
Sorry?
Hopefully.
Hopefully it will be new. Yeah, might be an old president, might be a new president, but no, they're going into an election process. So if, for example, so you could say that from the side of the person, there needs to be something that qualifies them as a prime minister, as a president. And then there is an election process by which they get the title. So there needs to be those two things that come together. From their side, there needs to have some qualification. And then there needs to be a process by which they get the term president. Otherwise, you could say that there's so many people that can become presidents that from their side, they have the qualification of being a president. But it's not that we call every one of them president. No, so there is a labeling process by which they're called president, but it also needs to be something that is coming from the side of the object. Like, for example, we can all call this president, but there is nothing in that has the qualification of being a president. Or if I take a donkey and I call a donkey a president, we can all call that president, but from the side of the donkey, there's nothing, no qualification that make them become a president. So there's one school of thought within the middle way schools that says that, so we need to have those two things coming together. Something needs to come from the side of the object, some qualification, some characteristics, and then there is a mental process by which it is given a title, given a name. All right, so there is a combination of two things. This school of thought is called the middle way autonomy school of thought, Madhyamika Svatantrika school of thought. But then there is a higher school of thought to that, which is a school of thought that in general, Tibetan Buddhism follows, and it comes from the Nalanda tradition, championed by Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, and so forth. And they say that actually nothing can come from the side of the object. There is no objective existence. It's all a mental process by which we label different things, and they come into existence through a process of labeling. So I, for example, as person, exists as being merely imputed by mind. There's nothing that is coming from the side of the object. A president is merely imputed by mind as president. there's nothing that is coming from the side of the object. In a sense that if I look at the object itself and try to pin down the precedent within that object, I will not be able to find it. If I'm looking at myself as a person, as I, as Yaki, as Katsun, I will not be able to find any Yaki or Katsun that I can point it and say that this is the real I, this is the real I, this is the real Katsun that goes from this lifetime to the next, that exists independently by its own power. There's nothing that I can find in that process. So, does it mean that I am just a name? Are we just names? Are we just labels? No, I'm not just a name. I'm not just a label, because I'm a person. A name doesn't have feelings. A name doesn't experience pain. So I exist merely by name, in a sense that there's nothing that exists objectively, independently in me. I exist just by name, merely by name. And the word merely is negating an independent existence. It's pretty difficult to understand what it means, right? What does it mean that I exist merely by name? It's pretty difficult to understand. It's difficult to understand because we expect to find something that we can point at.
There is no essence in you.
Yeah, it means that there's no essence in me. There's nothing in my core that makes me Katsun. There's nothing in my core that I can look at, that I can know if I dissect the body and my mind. There's nothing that I'll be able to point at and say that this is the real essence that makes me be who I am. At the end,
your name was given by somebody.
Yeah.
Your name, this is your name.
Yeah, it was.
You're not born with this name.
Yeah.
So it's just a label.
That's an excellent point, because this is one of the arguments that we use in the analytical process that checks whether we exist inherently. Like, for example, if I existed independently as Katsun, it means that I would not have had to be labeled as Katsun. The name would not have to be given to me in a certain, in my ordination process. Everyone would know me as such. Even my mother would know me as such right in birth. It's as if kind of there's like a baby bundle that is coming out of my mother's womb, wrapped in monk's clothes. And my mother would know that this is Katsun, now I've given birth to Katsun, wearing monk's robes and bald head. And now, of course, this is quite ridiculous, but that would be the implication of existing independently as Katsun. I was labeled as Katsun in a particular point in time when I took ordination. Actually, my real name as a monk is Kama Tsundru. Katsun is a contraction of karma, right? The first syllable from karma is kar. The second name is Tsundru, right? So Katsun is a contraction of Kama Tsundru. So when new people come to the center, and sometimes I'm introduced and they say, this is Katsun. This is a translator, Katsun. And it sounds as if kind of there's this entity that exists in that person, Katsun, in and of themselves. But at some point, they came into being through a process of labeling. But it doesn't mean that Katsun is just a name. I'm a person that exists by labeling. I'm a person. But there's no essence that you can find, that you can point at upon that analysis and investigation. So why are we speaking about it? Now, it's supposed to be like more of retreat kind of weekend, but we still need to speak about it in order to make our meditation be more potent and precise. So why are we speaking about it? So let's look again at the meditation outline.
So, Carlson,
Yeah.
what about, or maybe we come into that, reference to mind stream
Mm.
from one distance to another? How does that factor in terms of this essence, no everything?
All right. So how do we factor the fact that we have a mind stream. How do we reconcile having a mind stream, a certain continuum that goes from this lifetime to the next, and still say that we have no essence, we have no entity, we have no objective nature as human beings? Yeah, that's the question. So first of all, it is true that we do have a continuum. There's not only a continuum of consciousness, there's also a continuity of I, of me. Now there's I that exists in this life, and this I goes to next life. So there is a continuity, but then when we try to find out what is the core of that I that exists along that continuum, is it mind? Is the I identical to the mind? We see faults in that. Faults that we will see in that, and we'll also cover that later on, but I'm just going to preempt it. If you think that I'm my mind, because the mind is what continues from this lifetime to the next, then you can start to look at things that are more refined, like what type of consciousness or mind am I? What kind of mental continuum am I? I'm certainly not the continuity of sense consciousnesses. I'm not a continuity of eye consciousness, ear consciousness, and so forth. Of course, that would be ridiculous to think that we are sense consciousnesses. We mostly identify with our mental consciousness, and also the attributes that we ascribe to ourselves are based on our mental consciousness. I'm smart, I'm not smart, I'm compassionate, I'm an angry person, I'm very passionate person, I'm a righteous person. Those are things that are attributed mainly to our mental consciousness, right? But if we think that if we identify with the mind and we have different states of mind, then what mind are we? In a sense that a mind has a combination of different states of mind, a mental consciousness. So to begin with, am I an afflictive state of mind? Like, for example, am I anger? Am I attachment? Am I jealousy? Am I ignorance? Of course, you can say that I am angry, I'm ignorant, I'm attached, and so forth. But when I try to pin down what is I, what is me within mind, can I find actually one of those states of mind that will be that precise I or me? It's hard to find them within our afflictive states of mind. What about positive states of mind? Am I compassion? Am I wisdom? Am I patience? Also, it's hard to find I or me within any one of those states of mind. And also, if I was either one of those states of mind, it would have meant that since I always exist in this life, there's ever I that exists in each and every moment. And if I'm anger, in each and every moment in this life, I should be angry. If I'm compassion, if my nature is compassion, that's my true essence, my true nature, in each and every moment in this life, that should be it. I should be compassionate. And I know personally that I'm not compassionate unfortunately, in each moment in this life. But also, you can then ask, am I a realizing consciousness, or am I not a realizing consciousness? Am I correct consciousness, or am I an incorrect consciousness? There will be problems with each one of those assertions in trying to identify which type of consciousness is me. So why am I saying that? No, we have it seems that the biggest tendency would be to think that I am the mind that goes from this lifetime to the next. But still, it's not deep enough in the sense that we have different states of mind. So which state of mind are we? What type of mind is that goes from this lifetime to the next, which is the real sense of I? So when you start to look at mind, you can also not find any I that exists within that mind that you can identify as being the real I. So indeed, there is a stream of consciousness that goes from this lifetime to the next. But then that stream of consciousness is called a basis of imputation. So we have a stream of consciousness, and on that we impute I. So there's a stream of consciousness that goes from this lifetime to the next. And on top of it depends upon that, there's a labeled I that goes together with that consciousness from this lifetime to the next. So there is an I that goes from this lifetime to the next. There is consciousness that goes from this lifetime to the next. But I is only imputed on that consciousness. It is not found within that consciousness. Graham?
In one of the earlier sessions that we did, we were talking about time, the way time flows through our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So in every second of our life, we can experience multiple feelings all the way through our existence. Right this second, the feeling I had 5 seconds ago is gone. The feeling I'm going to have in 5 minutes' time, when I meditate, will be totally different again. So our whole life is just a series of small packages of time all the way through our life.
Yeah.
That's the way I'm sort of trying to put it together. You know, sort of we can change from second to second all the way through our life with all these different conflicting emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this ever-flowing process of change that we go through.
It can be pride, anger, and if we can sort of process that in our mind, the fact that we are changing from second to second, we can sort of try and short circuit that and realise that we are going to be changing from second to second. Anger, jealousy, pride, If you can sort of sit back and just know that, well, then you can sort of somehow short circuit that before you even get to it.
Which is
sort of what I'm trying to.
It's a good point, because we have, in the meditations on emptiness, there are different meditation procedures that we can use in order to develop a better and better understanding of how we lack that essence, that independently existing essence. So there are different types of reasons that we can use for that, and one of them is the reason of dependent arising. So if we were to formulate it in a really strict and dry language, we would say, I do not exist inherently because I arise in dependence upon others. It's not that dry, is it? It's okay. We can work with that. So I do not exist inherently because I am a dependent arising. I arise in dependence upon others. So this word dependent arising refers to everything that exists. Everything that exists arises in dependence on and in relation to others. And there are different levels of subtleties to that. To begin with, the closest subtlety is of cause and effect, which refers to what you have referred to. So there's that process of change that is affected by causes. Cause and conditions come to play and a situation arises. Cause and conditions for anger come into being and you become angry. Cause and conditions for attachment come together and attachment arises. Cause and conditions also occur in a process of growing up, becoming sick, getting old, and so forth. Right? All of that is affected by cause and conditions. So I do not exist in and of myself independently. First of all, because I depend upon cause and conditions. That's the first layer. So that's already good. It's kind of the first step that we take, which is essential in order to undermine that sense of stable, non-changing, independent sense of self that we have. But it's not that we stop just by that, because if we just had it been easy to realize that something does not exist inherently simply by the virtue of it depending upon cause and conditions, everyone would have long ago understood that. And there's something kind of, there are certain levels of our existence that are more subtle than just depending upon cause and conditions. Otherwise, it would have been too easy. I mean, but it's a crucial step, but it's not enough. Then we can also think of another level of how I have different parts. Now, like for example, there's me of yesterday. There would be me of tomorrow. I have different parts. No, when we think about it in terms of time. And then there is also a deeper level of understanding how I depend upon other things, other factors. And at the end, I is that which is only imputed by mind. If I look for the I within this body and mind, there's nothing that I'll be able to point my finger at. So again, I'll go back to the meditation outline. Does it answer your question? Or it wasn't a question, it was a comment, observation. So thank you, that's helpful. So the meditation outline begins with, and as I said, before we get to that, there are different reasons that you could use in order to meditate on emptiness. So one of the reasons is called reason of one or distinct. I'm just going to show you what else we have here. We have reason of one or many. And there are also other meditations on emptiness, like, for example, meditations in which you refute the four extremes of production, refuting the extreme of existence, the reason of dependent arising, and there are more. But in order to, I think, introduce meditations which use quite a lot of arguments that it is likely that many of you have had before, let's look at this meditation procedure. So first of all, we identify what the object of negation is, which is an inherently existing I. And we construct it in our mind in a way that we introduced in the morning session. Like, for example, thinking of an extreme situation where someone accuses you of something that you haven't done. Actually, you could also have done that thing. Let's say that you did put your hand in the till and you've been exposed. I mean, even if you've done it, there is still the sense of fear and panic that arises in your mind, which heightens that strong sense of self that arises in our mind. And it gives us the opportunity to analyze how the I appears to our mind in that occasion. Or when you hear that you won the lottery, or think that you were nominated to Australian of the Year, or to be Australian of the Year for a Nobel Peace Prize or what have you. You got the position that you wanted, the recognition that you wanted. So there's a strong sense of I that appears to our mind in those occasions, and we want to reconstruct it in our visualization. So that's the first step. Once we become clear about the way that I appear to my mind, and it comes together with appearances of independent existence, then the second step is establishing the pervasions. Now, what does it mean to establish the pervasions? Well, basically, the underlying point is that if it exists in that way, if it exists independently, I need to find it clearly and be able to point to it and say that this is the real I of me, that independently existing I of me. So we look for it and see whether it can be found. So, for example, if I say, there's a person called Leone. The person called Leone can be a man or a woman. There's no third option here. I mean, of course, I'm not talking about now gender discussion, just kind of in general, if we keep it simple. If I tell you that there is a person called Leone, the person can be either a woman or a man. So we start to investigate into that phenomenon, that person called Leone. And if in our analysis and investigation, we refute Leone being men, we can then come to the conclusion that therefore, the only possibility of Leone existing is as woman, right? If I negate Leone being men, Leone can only be a woman. So I'm looking for Leone, trying to see if there's something that I can find that I can point it. So I refute many other options. Leone is not a man, therefore Leone has to be a woman. So a similar process we follow when we check to see if something exists inherently. We try to look for it. If something exists inherently, I will have to find it in my process of analysis and investigation. So then, looking at phenomena and different ways of classifying phenomena, I can say that if something exists, it can exist as a singular thing or multiple things. There's no third option. It can either be singular or it can be multiple. There's no third option here. So in my process of analysis investigation, I said that, for example, if an inherently existing I exists, it either has to be a single thing or it has to be multiple things. There's no third option here. Nothing can be both singular and multiple. It can be either, if it exists, it is either singular or it is multiple. Do you agree with that? Yes. So then if I say, if I then go and refute it as being singular, the only possible solution would be that it is multiple. But then if I go on and also refute it as being multiple, if I've refuted it as being singular and refuted it as being multiple, there's no other way of existing. So therefore, I will have refuted it completely. It cannot exist. If it's not singular, if it's not multiple, and there's no third option, it doesn't exist at all. Is it confusing?
No, it's logical.
It's sometimes it sounds simple, but sometimes it sounds confusing. But it can be both at the same time.
And what is?
So the point is that I'm looking for an inherently existing thing, an inherently existing I that appears to my mind. So then I'm wondering, is the inherently existing I exists as a singular thing? And I find faults in that singular thing. So my second option is that it can exist as a multiple phenomena. Then I go on and refute it being multiple. So if an inherently existing I is not singular, and it is also not multiple, an inherently existing I doesn't exist. That is the meditation process, right? So I'll put it back on the screen. So here actually I spoke about reason of one or many. So we identify the object of negation, we construct it in the mind. Then we establish the pervasions. If it exists inherently, it has to be one or it has to be many. There's no third option here. And then the next two steps negate those two options. Negating the imputed phenomenon on the basis of imputation is being inherently one or being inherently multiple. Now there are a couple of terms here that might be a bit heavy. Imputed phenomenon and the basis of imputation. So what do they mean? Well, we have, for example, I, and I have a body and mind. I impute I called I on the basis of body and mind. So the body and mind are the basis of imputation, and the I is the imputed phenomenon, right? So we have, for example, this is flower, right? So, or this is beautiful, is it orchid? Yeah, it's orchid, right? So orchid is imputed, it depends upon the petals, the stem, the colors, the shape, and so forth. These are bases for calling this an orchid. If I tear apart this flower into tiny pieces, chopped into millimeters, and just put them in a heap, big heap. So you have like a big heap that is made of different colors. There would be purple, purple and white and green and so forth. Everything is put in a heap. And then someone will come to the room and you ask them, what is it? They wouldn't say orchid, will they? They would say it's just kind of a heap of turn of something that was torn apart. So we have a basis of imputation. That's the colors, the colors, the stem, the shape, and so forth. These are the basis of imputation, and on that we call that an orchid. On that we impute the term flower. So flower is imputed phenomenon. The imputed phenomenon. This petal is a basis of imputation. As persons, the body is a basis of imputation. The imputed phenomenon is me, I. My mind is a basis of imputation. The imputed phenomenon is I. So why am I saying that? Let's look at that again. Some of the meditation outline. The imputed phenomenon, I, and the basis of imputation is being inherently one. This is what we negate. So being inherently one, meaning that they're inherently identical. So I am inherently identical to the body. Not only inherently identical to the body, also we are completely one singular phenomenon. Or negating the imputed phenomenon and the basis of imputation is being inherently multiple. So for example, just to illustrate that, I have a body and mind, right? These are called the aggregates. Have you heard that word before, the aggregates? What the aggregates mean is that we have, collections. Yeah, we have, the physical and psychological components that belong to us. It depends upon the body. We call that an I, that's a physical thing, but also it depends upon our mind, a consciousness. We call that an I. The consciousness is divided into 4 aggregates, 4 different parts. So there's feeling or sensations. We have a sense of discrimination. This is it. This is that. We have primary mental consciousness, or primary consciousness, we can say. And then many other mental processes that are grouped together into an aggregate that is called composition of factors. So we as people, as human beings, we have both this kind of physical aspect to us, the body, and also the mind, which consists of those feelings and discrimination and just the main consciousness and all other mental processes. So if I'm identical, if I'm one with the body and mind, I have to be completely identical to them in all ways. Identical to the body in all ways, identical to the mind in all ways. If I'm inherently multiple, also, just as the body and mind are 2 things, there are multiple things, also I will have to have multiple eyes. I exist not just in eyes, but there are a few me's going around here. There's me that is body and me that is mind. Anyway, kind of this is the process that we go through when we try to entertain the different ways that we could exist. We could either exist as a singular thing or as a multiple thing. How will it affect our body and mind? In that, is the combination of body and mind, is it a singular thing? Is it a multiple thing? What would be the implication of that in terms of the identity that we have? So that is looking at one and multiple, but there's also one and distinct. So another way of looking at everything that exists, you can say that if something exists, it can be either identical or it could be different, distinct. There's no third option. It's either one with or identical, or there's different. There's no third option. So for example, if Yaki exists, if Katsun exists, it is either, if I exist inherently, I'm either completely identical to my body and mind, I'm completely different to the body and mind. There's no third option here because I exist independently, right? So this is what I'm speaking about, an inherently existing I. So if I exist inherently, independently, by its own power, it can either be completely identical with the body and mind or completely different to the body and mind. There's no third option here. So in this logic, I established the evasion. If I inherently exist, I'm either one with the body and mind or distinct from the body and mind. And then I go on and refute one with the body and mind, identical to the body and mind. And then I refute being distinct from the body and mind. If I refute both of them, the only conclusion that I can be left with is that therefore an inherently existing I cannot exist. It cannot exist because it's not inherently one, it's not inherently distinct. So since we're out of time now, and in this session we only spoke about the meditation, but we haven't done a meditation. So I apologize for that, but sorry?
We've got half an hour.
Oh, we haven't half an hour.
We have to stagger our lunch because of the yoga group.
There's a yoga group. We could have gone down and had a yoga session. Okay, so that's good that we have another half an hour. So in order then to kind of transition it into kind of applying it into a meditation, first of all, I'm wondering if you have any questions. Are you confused? Does it slightly make sense, or does it not make sense at all? What is your name, by the way? Sorry. Florin.
Yeah.
All right.
Looks a bit complicated because you go through these 4 stages.
Yeah.
Like why there is no a meditation just to be just a negation of the I? Like why you have to go through all these other processes?
Well, why do you have to go through all the processes? Well, first of all, we want to make a distinction between the I that exists and the I that doesn't exist. We don't want to negate the I that does exist. No, I exist. It's not that I want to negate just me, because I exist. What I want to negate is a misunderstanding of me, or kind of something that is not me, and independently existing me. So first of all, in order to make sure that we negate the right thing, we have to precisely identify what it is. So that's the first step. Then let's say that I manage to successfully distinguish between I that exists, I that have feeling, that has experiences, the thing and so forth, between the I that doesn't exist and inherently existing me. So I'm able to make a distinction that is clear to a certain degree. But then if in my meditation, if I just sit and think an inherently existing I doesn't exist, I don't really support it with logic. Will it work? I mean, it's not going to be, I think, strong enough to really eliminate ignorance. Just thinking that an inherently existing I doesn't exist, it's not going to be really strong in order to completely eliminate ignorance. Maybe it will affect to a certain degree the way that we think of ourselves, and we have to meditate on that for a very long time. But if we haven't really followed, I think, a process by which we see that in no way whatsoever an independently existing I can exist unless we go through the process, we're not going to reach deep enough. And to reach deep enough would be to completely negate ignorance, to completely eliminate ignorance. So in order then to go to reach deep enough, then looking at that process, we identify, first of all, what is the thing that we negate. And steps 2, 3, and 4 are just a structured process by which we can then reach deeper in order to, in a systematic way, refute an independently existing self, not just think that I do not exist, but to follow a certain logical process to prove to ourselves that it doesn't exist. Does it answer your question?
Yeah. Thanks.
Jeff?
Coming back to the mind stream thing. So if the mind stream, if I'm using the right word here,
Yeah, mind stream, mental continuum, both are okay.
okay. So if that's the subtle consciousness, how is that not part of the existing I?
Well, you can say that it is part of the existing I, in a sense that it is the basis of imputation of the existing I, but it's not an independently existing I.
Okay. So then, in terms of looking for this existing I that doesn't exist,
this subtle consciousness is not findable.
It's not what?
Findable. Can't think of the word. We can't find
Yeah,
it.
it's not.
there.
Well, we have, do we all agree that we have a stream of consciousness? We have, right? Well, no, we all agree to that, I think, intellectually, but we still have to kind of, I guess, meditate also on our own mind and just sense in a meditation the continuum of consciousness that we have, you know, to kind of to make it more real. So we have a stream of consciousness, a flow of consciousness. The question is, can we find an independently existing I within that stream of consciousness? Hard.
Or the other way around, can we find that within the I?
Can we find a stream of consciousness within the I? Well, but the question is, do I exist inherently? In that, can I find somewhere an independently existing I? So within the stream of consciousness, we cannot find an inherently existing I because in the way that I illustrated it just briefly, it's hard to find it within different states of mind. You know, am I an afflictive state of mind? Am I a realizing consciousness and I'm not a realizing consciousness? So this is an investigation of the I. I have a consciousness, but I'm not my consciousness. So I have a stream of consciousness, but I cannot be found within the stream of consciousness. I is labeled and depends upon the stream of consciousness, but is not found within the stream of consciousness. Now the question is then, what about the stream of consciousness? Does the stream of consciousness exist by its own power, independently? Also, it does not exist inherently. Nothing exists inherently. So if you look for consciousness, within that flow of consciousness, also you'll not be able to find anything that you can point it. So consciousness is imputed and depends upon a stream of experience, that which is an experience.
So the stream of consciousness itself is dependent on each incarnation, so to speak.
It depends upon its own basis of designation. No, so would you say that a stream of consciousness depends upon the person, the I? You can say to a certain degree, but it has to be explained in a particular way. Like, for example, I was born in this life as a human being, right? So I was born as a human being with a certain body and brain that can support the consciousness of a human being. And so long as I live as a human being, the stream of consciousness that exists in this body is a stream of consciousness of a human being. It's not a stream of consciousness of pig or a stream of consciousness of a minor bird. Now, I have potential upon my mind stream, my consciousness, that could develop into a stream of consciousness of a minor bird or a spider or a pig or a horse. But in this life, I have a stream of consciousness of a human being. And when this body dies, there is a subtle consciousness that continues. And upon the next basis, physical basis that it will have, it will develop into a stream of consciousness of that particular, that is supported by a particular body. So you can say that in that sense, my continuum of consciousness depends upon the I, or depends upon the I in a particular situation, I as a human being. But basically depends upon the body, doesn't it? The I has a body. Therefore, the stream of consciousness depends upon also the body. It doesn't exist by itself, independently. All right, let's start to do a meditation. We're not going to, so what I thought of doing in the next few sessions today and tomorrow is to look at this process of meditation and try to implement in our meditation in emptiness different bits of that meditation structure, so that later on at home you'll be able to do it by yourself, or to come up with more points for your meditation, see if you can fit them into this meditation structure. If it works for you, that's great. If it doesn't work for you, there are also other meditation processes that you can look for and see if it works better for you, right? So it's not that for each one of us, everything will work exactly in the same way. But it's still useful to find something, some structure that we could try out. So,
Is this an animals?
no, but for a good price, it could be made of. Yeah. I'll send it. So, how do you circulate different things?
Can you send it to me?
I'll send it to Eva, and Eva will distribute it.
Yes,
Cool.
she looks after us in that way.
That's good.
Yeah, keeps us connected.
Excuse me.
Yeah, Mother Eva.
Excuse me, just ask just one more question.
Mhm.
So, in conclusion, if there is no inherent independent I can say that I am non-I. I can say I am a non-I. Yes?
You can say that I'm a not inherently existing I. Yeah.
So that means if there is nothing inherently independent, that means everything which exists, it's a
Inherently existing,
I, yes?
non-inherently existing phenomenon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So that makes that everything, including I, it's the same.
We have it's the same in nature, but not the same in all ways. So just to illustrate that, we are the same in being human beings. We are the same in being impermanent, but we are not the same in all ways. You are Florian, I'm Yaki. Similarly, we are the same in being non-inherently existing person. So this nature of non-existing inherently is the same. So we have certain attributes, certain features that are the same nature, but it doesn't mean that in all ways we are the same. We're still different in some aspects, but a very more subtle nature, the nature of emptiness, not existing inherently. There's no distinction between you and me.
What about with existence around us? Is that also?
Yeah, everything has the same mode of existence. So nothing exists by its own power. Although everything appears to us currently to exist inherently, appear to our senses as existing inherently, appearing to our mind as existing inherently, nothing exists in this way. So this finite nature of existing, its absence of inherent existence, is the same for everything that exists. There's no distinction whatsoever. Not only that, even kind of the thing that is most hopeful, that gives us the greatest hope, is that when we look at the nature of our mind, the non-inherent existence of our mind, it is exactly the same as the non-inherent existence of the Buddha's mind. So this final nature of existence of our mind and Buddha's mind is exactly the same, which is what we call the Buddha nature. So we have a Buddha nature, which means the ability to become Buddha, because the very nature of our mind is not different to the very nature of the Buddha's mind. In that our mind is not inherently afflicted. It's not that inherently anger is ingrained, is built into our mind. It's not that attachment and pride, ignorance, confusion. It's not that there are inherent aspects of our mind. And because the non-inherently existing states of mind, a mind does not inherently exist, this can be eliminated. Anger, attachment, and so forth can be eliminated. So the nature of our own mind and the nature of a Buddha's mind is not different.
And also, I'm going about the other creatures or animals.
Yeah.
The same.
Yeah, exactly the same. This is why we say that all living beings have Buddha nature, because the no affliction is ingrained within the nature of the mind.
So this is like you can have this type of meditation that you see everything as Buddha, as a state of.
Yeah, you have meditations in recognizing all sentient beings Buddha nature, but that depends on understanding the absence of inherent existence.
When I start to lose the plot on this and start going down that, like, there's no inherent existence of anything. I add, when I start to get a bit
Muddled.
or a bit shaky about this and go, nothing exists inherently. I add everything is a dependent arising. So everything, nothing is independent, but everything is a dependent arising. So when I start to get a bit scared about not existing, I just add in. But I am a dependent arising.
Yeah.
There is something that I can hang on to that's not totally empty.
There's a really nice description of this process of evolution of our meditation. So now we speak about emptiness, and I think that to a certain degree it makes sense to us. Now, sometimes it makes more sense, sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense. We go a lot of back and forth in developing our understanding of this topic. It's quite hard, isn't it? It's hard going. That's the first step. Then you take it on to your meditation, and you follow a meditation procedure like the one that I've put on the screen. And then it is said that when you become an experienced meditator in that process, then the initial step is that you, in your mind, you make it so clear, the appearance of an inherently existing I becomes really clear. You're able to identify it really precisely, and then you start to look for it. Now, we're so used to that appearance of inherently existing I that we completely conflate, we completely identify with that inherently existing I. We see no other way of existing other than existing inherently. So then we start to look for it, right? So we start to look for it as being like either identical to the body and mind or being inherently different to the body and mind. And when we see that it cannot exist in this way, it cannot exist in the other way, it is said that one of the first things that can happen is that a fear that arises in the mind that therefore I do not exist at all. Now, since we're so used to thinking of ourselves as existing inherently, then if I'm not found within the body, and if I'm not found within the I, it seems that we can fall into a nihilistic sense that therefore I do not exist at all. There is no such thing as I. So first of all, in the teachings, it is said that could give rise to fear. So for us, we haven't got to that stage. If we haven't even become scared of emptiness, it seems that we have a way to go. In order to understand the implication of the non-inherent existence of the self. Now, it is said that when it happens to a yogi, when that initial onset of that deep understanding that inherently existing I doesn't exist, they become so scared of it or kind of perplexed, you might say, overwhelmed by it, that one of the initial reaction is to kind of, to breathe in and kind of, to hug themselves or touch themselves. And just by kind of having that initial reaction, you get a sense that actually it's not that I do not exist at all. I do exist. I do affirm my existence. I have feelings or sensations. What I've negated is an independently existing self. Since I've negated an inherently existing self, the only thing that I am left with is that if I exist, I can only exist independence in relation to others. So that's a dependent arising. Yeah.
It's nice to have something to hang on.
Yeah. That's why we say that, that's why we say that the two are, the two coins, two sides, of the same coin. You can look at each and every phenomenon as being inherently, being empty of inherent existence. Therefore, it is a dependent arising. Since it is a dependent arising, it is empty of inherent existence.
Well, I think you mentioned about the Buddha nature, the very subtle mind, the clear light mind that goes from one life to the other. It change, can you say, is always there. It will be destroyed, unlike other things. Is that a relatively permanent thing, can you say?
So I mentioned Buddha nature, and Buddha nature is explained on different levels and different types of Buddha nature. So there is a sutra explanation, you could say, an explanation that might be coming more from the tantric perspective. In sutra, when we speak of Buddha nature, there are two types of Buddha natures. There is one that is naturally present, and that is the emptiness of our mind. The emptiness of our mind is naturally present in that it is not created in a certain process just by having a mind. And the mind exists since beginningless time. It is always there. The mind is always empty of inherent existence. And that emptiness of the mind will become in the future the emptiness of a Buddha's mind. So it's the same emptiness. It is not divisible from the emptiness of a Buddha's mind. It's the same nature. That is the main thing that we call Buddha nature. Another thing is that is called the potential to be developed. So we have a potential for developing positive qualities. That is also a Buddha nature, the potential of developing infinite knowledge, infinite compassion, infinite love, infinite patience. That developmental potential is also there. It is there because afflictions are not ingrained within the nature of the mind. The mind can be changed. So that's from a sutra perspective. From a tantric perspective, this is where we come to talk about the clear light mind, in a sense that this kind of extremely subtle consciousness that goes from this lifetime to the next. This is coming more from the perspective of Tantra. And I think that it is likely that there are also references to that as being Buddha nature connected with that. I cannot speak about it clearly because I myself am not clear about it. I think I've heard about it before, but I don't have all my facts sorted in my mind. So,
does it go on forever? It's something that will not disappear.
Well, so if we look at mind, the mind is always there, since that without beginning, and also will be there when we become Buddha. So the mind is always there; that will not disappear. When we look at the emptiness of the mind, it is also always there; it will not disappear. I mean, of course, currently we have anger. Not always. Sometimes anger is dormant. Sometimes it is there just as a potential. And what is currently present is love. But when cause and conditions come together, anger will arise. But there will come a time in the future in which we will have completely eliminated anger. Anger will never arise. So the emptiness of anger will also go away, will also become non-existent in our mind. But there will still be the emptiness of an omniscient mind, emptiness of a mind that is fully developed. So that is always there. Now, Buddha nature. Buddha nature exists so long as we're not Buddhas, in a sense that it is a potential for becoming Buddha. Once we become Buddha, it's not that we have a potential to become Buddha, we're already Buddha. So speaking about Buddha potential is at a time in which we're not Buddha yet. At a time in which we're already Buddha, there's no point of talking about it as Buddha nature because we are Buddhas. Now, Buddha nature is also called the seed of Buddhahood. So once the result is established, the seed is no longer needed. All right, we have 5 minutes. I think that we can forgo a meditation for this session, unless you want to kind of stay hungry for another hour or so. Maybe we'll just, if you have no further questions, I wonder if people at home have any questions or comments.
Hi, can you hear me, Venerable Carlson? No, you can't hear me. Can you hear me?
I guess that you don't. Yeah, Sarah is unmuted, but I think that probably, I'm not sure that Sarah is wanting to say something. Well, if anyone wants to ask a question or say something, then you can put your hand up or write something in the chat. And we'll see if you want to. Sarah wants to ask. Sarah, have you got a question?
Can you hear me? No, you can't hear me.
She was speaking before. Okay. That's weird. We can't hear Sarah. Let's see. Okay, Sarah,
Can you hear me?
You.
I was like trying to type here and I could. Sorry, yes. Thank you. I just have a question related to ignorance. If you look at like just in general thinking about human beings,
Yeah.
we are ignorant as human beings and we are not able to realize or to see how things really exist. If I look at the 7 billion human beings in this moment, it's because of karma, our own karma as human beings. Like we haven't developed that, like that merit to be able to realize of that. And like it looks like it is some, like if I look in general, it's like so few of an amount of people that have been able to realize it, how it's like, yeah.
So from a Buddhist perspective, we say that we've been cycling in cyclic existence since time without beginning. Now, if you wonder, did ignorance arise at some point, in a sense that was there a phase before in which we did not have ignorance, and then ignorance has arisen at some point? It is called one of the unspecified questions. So the Buddha was asked that himself, and the Buddha himself refrained from answering that. So from a Buddhist perspective, kind of we say that we've always had ignorance. Not only always we've had ignorance, since we have been here since time without beginning and up until now, we've grown so accustomed to ignorance that we totally buy into it. We totally buy into the appearances of things as if they exist in and of themselves independently. And hardly we question those appearances. So Panchen Losang Chögyam was a great Tibetan master, said in the past that those that do not have enough merit, they don't even question emptiness. So to just raise question with respect to the mode of existence already require a certain degree of merit. If you don't have enough merit, you'll not even start to question ignorance. So I think that to put a spin on it, I think that we can say that all of us are fortunate because it is indicative that we have done something positive in the past that makes us look into the nature of reality and start to raise up some questions about ignorance. Now, about ignorance, but also about the actual way that things exist, about reality, about emptiness. Then also Panchen Losang Chögyam said that those who do raise doubts about emptiness will start to tear cyclic existence to shreds, right? That's the first step into eliminating ignorance, start to question the nature of existence. But not only that, also Panchen Losang Chögyam said it in one of his writings that to see the nature of the mind, to see the emptiness of the mind, you need to have merit and you also need to have eliminated obscurations. Which means that here, for example, we might have an intellectual discussion about emptiness. You might study it at university and on an academic level and become an exceptional scholar that can cite different arguments of Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and so forth. But to realize emptiness, you need, on top of that, you need to have enough merit and you need also to have purified negativities and obscurations. What it means is that, if I were to put it bluntly, our mind is currently filled with garbage. There's so much garbage happening now in our mind, the garbage of afflictive states of mind. In order to create space for realizations to arise, first of all, we need to chuck out the garbage, or to at least make some space. And to make some space in our mind for the development of wisdom, the wisdom of emptiness, we need to accumulate merit. We need to purify negativities and obscurations. Now, we use the term to accumulate merit. It sounds quite elusive. Now, what does it mean? You can say that in general, what it means is developing a certain positivity. Certain positivity is also quite loose, right? It sounds quite airy-fairy to develop some positivity. What it means is that we develop positive states of mind. We develop, first of all, you can say faith and trust in the teachings, which creates that ability to listen to the teachings and also to take them on board, to apply them to our own mind. But not only to apply them to our own mind, but also to work to reduce our attachment and anger and pride and jealousy, because only if we start to bring down those afflictive states of mind, we'll have room for developing positive states of mind. If our mind is still governed by strong anger, strong attachment, strong pride, strong jealousy, strong ignorance, and so forth, it'll be so hard to develop positive qualities and so hard to develop a greater understanding of reality. So we have this process by which we bring more positivities, which means we accumulate merit. And merit can be accumulated not only through developing positive states of mind, but we also have practices such as making prostrations, doing certain recitations, being generous, and so forth. All of those things contribute to the accumulation of merit. But also we need to purify negativities and obscurations, reduce their power in order to allow wisdom to arise. So going back to your question, Sarah, I think that so many of us, so many people around the world haven't spent enough time in doing that, to the point in which there is this critical mass of having enough merit and having purified a lot of negativities and obscurations to at least start to question the nature of reality. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. So I guess this is one of our tasks, to start to chuck out the garbage. Yeah. All right, let's take a break.
We'll be back at 1:45.
Okay.
You'll be back at 3.
All right. So I'll be back at 3. We have a discussion session at 1:45. So I understand, do we have 2 discussion sessions, one here and one online with Gompo? Is that the way that
Start all together,
we start all together?
and then we'll have one in Gompo, and Gompo will
All right, cool.
moderate one online.
That's cool. So thank you very much. See you soon. Thank you.
Go and chew on that.
Yeah. Sorry? Yeah. So do we need now to finish the session?
Stop. So what did you do to stop to get the sound through?
So you look at
We'll
this.
just turn it off maybe first here.
Oh no, it's okay. So you look at this.
Sorry. Yeah.
Then you see select a speaker. So we have a microphone,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is this.
Yeah.
But then we have also a speaker to listen to people at home.
Well,
So
we
we have,
had to change it before.
yeah, for some reason it changed
Yeah.
by
For some
itself.
reason,
Yeah.
when we've done it, it's
Yeah.
always been fine. So
Yeah.
something's just changed on there. Okay. Maybe they've even upgraded like Zoom or something. Like maybe there's something changed or no, I don't know.
Sometimes it just kind of happens randomly.
Yeah, because that's
Yeah.
the second. Okay. So all right. So we need to go to this one and take it off there.
What you can also do is try to put it on this. Epson is this one, I think.
Yeah,
Is it
because I was
Epson?
just wondering whether it's
Yeah.
to do with the projector that we've put in.
We can maybe try it in the afternoon session, see if we can get the audio through this.